Imagine for a moment a postman walking his route on your street. But it's not long before you notice that I am not your regular postman, delivering the mail you might normally expect. You see, I deliver stories, tales of the grim and mysterious in particular. Ghosts and shadows haunt these pages, some inspired by true stories, others entirely from my own mind. And if you decide you're brave enough to see what I've delivered today, well, I warned you.
Go downstairs. This happened back in the early 80s when my kids were still pretty young. I was at a garage sale in town one day in the summer and saw a specific kind of game that I can't mention for trademark reasons, and at the time I hadn't heard anything about the negative connotations that people were associating with this game. I simply saw it and thought my kids would have fun with it and asked the woman running the garage sale if she would go down on her price. She said no, and so I just left. That night, I was thinking about the game for some reason, wondering if maybe I should have bought it after all to give the kids something to do on a rainy day. Regardless, I put it out of my mind and went to bed. The night was quiet until around 2 a.m. when I heard something. It's hard for me really to describe, but I get goosebumps to this day every time I think about it. The sound started off quiet enough to where I thought maybe it was just an appliance in the house or something, but it soon got louder. And it would keep getting louder, in fact. It sounded like a deep, grinding noise, but not really what you'd call a mechanical grinding. It was like it was coming from something alive. I opened my eyes as I lay in bed next to my husband. I was looking up at our ceiling fan and noticed something behind it. It was dark in the room, but the hall light was on so I could just see the outline of something on our bedroom ceiling. It looked like a black cloud or something, and it wasn't sitting still. It was swirling on the edges, and it was growing. I know it sounds insane, but I remember it clearly to this day, and the sight of it, along with the sound it seemed to be making, literally paralyzed me with fear. I mean literally. I couldn't move. I tried. I couldn't speak, although my chin did quiver. I tried to call out to my husband, but nothing came out. I could only just lie on my back, petrified as the black shadow grew closer to me, and the grinding noise. It sounded like whatever it was filled with hate and getting angrier. The deep, organic, slow grinding continued to get louder. Although I couldn't speak, I kept thinking one thing in my head. Please, Jesus, get this thing away. I thought to myself, in the name of Jesus, I command you to go. Then the weirdest thing happened. As suddenly as it had shown up, it was gone, and I was able to move again. I quickly and shakily turned to my husband and woke him up. I told him everything that had just happened. I was terrified and probably sounded like I was out of my mind. He told me I'd just had a bad dream. I knew that couldn't be the case, although the thought of that did bother me, and as time went on, I began to think that maybe he was right, and it was just a bad dream after all. After a few months, we moved into a new house. Nothing else like the shadow on the ceiling had happened. We just needed a bigger space for our family, and my parents were moving out of their old house. We bought it and moved our stuff in as soon as we were able. Before long, the kids had all claimed their bedrooms, and we took the master bedroom across from them upstairs. A few days into living at the new house, me and my husband were asleep soon after all the kids went to bed. Again, it was a very quiet night like normal. The kids weren't up talking, and all their doors were closed. I had been asleep for a few hours, but after a while I woke up, though I didn't open my eyes. I woke up to a voice. It wasn't an audible one, just a voice in my head. It was very bizarre, and I know it sounds nuts, but that's what happened. The voice was very clear and only said 2 words. Go downstairs. I didn't know what to think. I'd never had anything like that happen before, and just chalked it up to my imagination being weird. So I thought, no, I'm not going downstairs. I'm tired. Soon, though, I heard the voice in my head again, but strangely, especially since, like I said, it was a voice in my head, it had a more stern tone. Go downstairs. No, I thought. I'm not going downstairs. I'm tired. What am I thinking? The voice wasted no time in responding this time, and it was definitely angry now. And if I could have heard it audibly, I'm sure I would have been terrified by its tone this time. Go downstairs. Fine, I thought, as I stood up onto the cold hardwood floor. I put my robe on and walked out into the hallway. The kids' doors were all still closed tight, and I walked down the creaky antique staircase down to the first floor of the house. The first thing I did when I got down there was walk to the back door where we always came in from the driveway. I opened it and looked outside. There was nothing there, and nobody around. After all, it was the middle of the night. I can't explain why I went to check the back door right away. Maybe in the moment I thought the voice was telling me that somebody was in the driveway. But like I said, nobody was there. After that, I walked into the dining room and turned the light on. Nothing out of the ordinary. Then I walked into the playroom, then the living room. After going into the living room to check it out, I just collapsed onto the couch in frustration. What in the world am I doing? I thought to myself as I sat there, wide awake. Then I heard it. Immediately, goosebumps broke out on my arms, because to me, it was a very familiar sound. The deep and slow grinding noise started at the back door, where I had just come from. It slowly got louder as it began tracing my steps through the house that I had just made. Grinding. I knew what I would see as soon as whatever it was rounded the corner, and I didn't know if I could emotionally handle it if I saw that thing again. I know it sounds cliché, but I did in fact pinch myself in that moment several times as I sat there, wide-eyed on the couch, to make sure I wasn't dreaming or sleepwalking. The grinding, again sounding very angry, like an enraged animal or something, soon entered the playroom, only one room away from where I was. Again, the only thing I knew I could do was pray, terrified as I was, and so I began to pray out loud, since I could speak this time. After just a few seconds of my praying, the sound stopped progressing through the house. Then I heard it go back through the playroom, through the dining room, then out through the back door. My husband believes me now, and I can't explain this really, but I just feel like the experiences I had have something to do with that game that I saw at the garage sale, and that whatever it was that came into my house was angry that I didn't bring it home that day. I could be wrong, and the incidents might not be connected at all, but I do wonder. The Passageway. A couple years ago, me and a couple other guys decided to book a room at a bed and breakfast that was located in a locally famous haunted house in Missouri. It was me and my older brother and our best friend James. The three of us are super into spooky and paranormal stuff, even though my brother is a huge chicken. But we also really love fishing, so this was right up our alley since it was very near to the Ozarks. We planned on spending the day renting some kayaks and fishing, then driving to the haunted house and exploring. When we got to the house, we realized that we were the only guests that night, which we thought was awesome, because it basically gave us free reign of the place to look around and take pictures that we could look at later to see if any ghosts showed up in them. The owners of the house met us there and gave us the grand tour when we showed up. Turns out, the house used to belong to a well-known doctor in the area just after the time of the Civil War. He lived there while treating patients and keeping patients there while they were being treated. Long story short, and I do mean a long story, one of the most fascinating parts of the tour was when the owners showed us a secret passageway upstairs. There was a door in the master bedroom, which used to be the infamous doctor's room, and it just kind of looked like a second closet. But when we opened it, we found that it actually was a secret, dark hallway that went into an adjacent room, which happened to be the room we decided to stay in that night. Mainly because there was only 3 choices, and my brother didn't want to stay in the doctor's room or the room where a little girl supposedly died, and the owners had seen fit to decorate with spooky-looking dolls. After the owners left, we went outside and walked around the house, taking pictures from out there. Then we went back in and explored until very late at night. Finally, we decided to hit the hay. I was going to share the bed with my brother, and James would sleep on the floor. When we took our stuff up to the room, the first thing I noticed was the 2 closet doors. Although I knew now that the one on the right actually went into the passageway that led to the doctor's bedroom. We were about to get into our sleeping bags when suddenly my brother realized he forgot to grab a bottle of water out of the fridge in the kitchen, and he gets very thirsty at night, so he really needed it. But he absolutely did not want to go downstairs alone, especially after we had already turned all the lights off. After whining about it for a minute, James said that he would go down with him, and so they left me in the bedroom, reading a book that the owners had on the nightstand. The lights were all on, and I wasn't about to turn them off until the other 2 had come back, so even though I was looking forward to going to sleep, I decided to read until they returned. Not even a minute went by, and I heard something. It was the sound of a doorknob jiggling slightly. I would have recognized it anywhere, and at first I thought it might be the other 2 guys coming back for some reason. But when I looked up, it wasn't the doorknob on the main door jiggling. It was the doorknob on the door to the secret passageway. I could see the doorknob shaking, and I looked down at the crack to see if I could see a light on the other side. It was pitch black. I put the book down in front of me and just stared at the doorknob in shock. Then I watched as it finally began to turn. It turned very slowly, as if whatever had hold of it barely had a grip. It finally turned all the way, and the door slowly cracked. Of course, the thought crossed my mind that it might be the guys messing with me, but I still had chills. I said nothing, but the door stopped moving. Then, after a brief pause, the door closed back and latched, and the doorknob turned back to the way it was. I swear then, the sound that I heard the second the door closed was James and my brother's footsteps stomping up the stairs as they talked loudly to each other. They came back in the bedroom, and James got in his sleeping bag while my brother got in his and put YouTube up on his phone to go to sleep to. Neither of them asked if anything happened while they were gone, or even hinted at doing anything. The next morning we woke up to have breakfast, and I finally worked up the nerve to ask what they had done the night before. My brother said they went down to get water out of the fridge, then walked around the downstairs taking pictures of themselves in every mirror they could find to see if they could spot any ghosts in the pictures. Then they came right back to the bedroom. I asked if they had gone into the doctor's room, and my brother said there was no way he was going to that doctor's room in the middle of the night with all the lights off, even if somebody paid him. So I said that there was no chance then that they would have been in that secret passageway. They gave me a weird look, knowing that I had a story to tell them. After I spilled the beans, they asked why in the heck I didn't tell them that happened when they came back, and I said I was afraid that if I did, they wouldn't want to spend the night there anymore. I am 100% confident that my brother and James were telling the truth, and I have no idea what it was that was creeping in the secret passageway that night. Laundry. I had sent my kids off to school and was getting ready to start a load of laundry in our finished basement. My husband had gone off to work about 3 hours before that, and so I was alone in the house, just like most days. The only others around the house were our 2 Siberian Huskies outside, and our mail would often come down through the sliding glass door in the basement to look in on me as I did laundry, and sure enough, when I looked up, there he was. I didn't usually let him in when he watched me from outside, but today he was looking especially cute on the other side of the glass, so I let him in. Our male husky had the sweetest disposition of any dog we've ever owned. He had a very gentle demeanor with everyone, and was never aggressive towards humans, even if they were unfamiliar to him. But he was also confident, and would protect his family if a strange dog was around. After I let him in, he excitedly ran around the basement, sniffing everything while I changed the laundry machines. Then after a few minutes of sniffing every inch of the house, tail wagging furiously the entire time, he calmed down and plopped himself down on the floor in between the couch and the TV. I was feeling more tired than usual that day, and decided that the dog had the right idea. So I thought I'd go ahead and lay on the couch to take a quick nap while the machines were running. I fell asleep quickly, but wasn't asleep long. I woke up to the sound of my dog's low growl. When my eyes opened, I was staring at the ceiling. Then I turned my head down towards him. I assumed I had misheard the growl, and maybe it was just the sound of his stomach digesting as he slept or something. But when I looked at him, he was sitting up, and he was still growling steadily. "Hey, what's the matter?" I asked, turning my body toward him and propping my head up on my arm. He just continued to growl, and at first I thought he was growling at me. His ears twitched curiously, and I noticed that his eyes weren't on me. They seemed to be focused on something just above me. I turned to my back, but there was nothing there. I sat up and looked around the room. Nothing. I turned back to my dog. "What are you growling at?" Suddenly, he let out a panicked bark, which then went back to a growl, but the growling grew louder, and my dog suddenly stood up on all fours. His ears then went back, and I was starting to feel pretty uneasy. Again, I turned behind me, but I couldn't see anything there. When I turned back to my dog, his eyes had wandered up a bit, and he began backing away as he growled and barked. His tail hung low, almost between his legs, but not quite. I tried calling his name, but he refused to break his gaze from whatever he was staring at. It looked like he was staring at something very tall behind me, and he was scared. More scared than I have ever seen him. He was terrified. I didn't dare turn behind me again. I knew that I probably wouldn't see anything just like before, but just the thought of something being behind me that I couldn't see was scaring me to death. And so I began to pray. After I had finished praying, I opened my eyes to see that my dog's ears had gone back to normal, and his growling had stopped. He came up to me and sniffed my hand, then laid down again at my feet. I took him outside, and we went for a walk. I didn't go back down to our basement by myself for a long time after that.